In 1985, everything made in Canada came with an unspoken promise. Your winter coat would outlast your career, your hockey skates would survive your childhood, and the tools in your father's garage would still work when you inherited them. By 2005, that promise was gone. Canadian factories were still making a profit when the boardrooms shut them down and shipped production overseas. So why did they choose to destroy the quality that made this country proud and known for? Who got rich while Canada slowly lost its soul? A Saturday morning in February 1985. The bedroom window is frosted solid on the inside. The thermometer outside reads -28. But the man getting dressed does not worry about the cold. He pulls on his Stanfield long underwear, bought 18 years earlier, and the fabric feels exactly like it did 18 winters ago. The stitching at the seams is still tight. The elastic at the waist still grips without cutting. The wool still holds heat the moment it touches skin. This is not luck. This is what made in Canada meant. On the kitchen table sits the Eaton catalog. 300 pages thick. Heavy as a phone book. A family flips through it after breakfast. Page after page of tools, clothing, furniture, and kitchen goods. Most of it made within 1,000 miles of where they sit. The prices are listed clearly. A winter coat for $89. Work boots for $75. Hockey gloves for $22. And beside nearly every item, those 3 words. Made in Canada. In the garage, the father reaches for his socket set. Canadian Tire brand. Purchased in 1971. 14 years of oil changes, engine repairs, and farm equipment fixes. Not a single socket cracked. Not one ratchet stripped. The metal is thick and heavy in his hand. This is the kind of tool a man passes down to his son. In the living room, folded across the back of the couch, sits a Hudson Bay blanket. 4 red stripes. 8 points. Made in Ontario. The label says so. Guaranteed for life. The grandmother bought it in 1958 as a wedding gift. 27 years later, the wool is still perfect. No thinning. No holes. Just warmth. Down the street, a boy laces up his Bauer skates. Forged in Kitchener, Ontario. His older brother wore them for 6 years before passing them down. The leather is scarred and stained, but the boot still supports the ankle. The blades still hold an edge. These skates will last another 5 years minimum. This was the promise. Make it right. Make it last. Stand behind it. Break this, and we will replace it. That is how sure Canadian factories were. The crack appeared in 1988. The politicians on television talked about free trade with the United States. They smiled and promised this would help everyone. More jobs. Better prices. Canadian manufacturing would be fine. But in factories across Ontario and Quebec, the owners were not smiling. The workers heard the speeches and felt something twist in their stomachs. They had heard promises before. By 1989, the labels started changing. A man walks into Canadian Tire looking for a socket wrench. He picks one up. The packaging looks the same. The price is actually lower than last year. But when he flips it over, the small print reads differently now. Designed in Canada. Made in Mexico. He buys it anyway. Tools are tools. 6 months later, the socket cracks while he is changing his oil. The metal splits right down the side. He stares at it in his hand. His old set from 1971 has never done this. Not once in 18 years. He drives back to Canadian Tire and buys another one. This one lasts 4 months. In 1990, Stanfield announces they are moving production to Central America. The company puts out a statement. Same quality. Better price. Good news for Canadian families. A man receives his new long underwear in the mail. The packaging looks identical. The price is actually $3 cheaper. He opens it and holds the fabric up to the light. It is thinner. He can see his hand through it. The elastic feels different. Looser. Cheaper. The fabric has a chemical smell that his old pair never had. He does not complain. Not yet. But he notices. By 1992, more factories are making announcements. Moving production overseas. Cutting costs. Staying competitive. The workers read these statements and understand what they really mean. But here is what nobody saw coming. The factories did not just move production. They moved the knowledge. The men who knew how to forge steel. The women who knew how to double-stitch seams. The skills built over 50 years. All of it packed into shipping containers and sent away. January 1st, 1994. NAFTA takes effect. The North American Free Trade Agreement. Politicians shake hands for the cameras. Business leaders talk about opportunities. Workers watch the news and feel cold in their stomachs. Within 18 months, the collapse begins. By 1995, 400,000 manufacturing jobs are gone. Not moved. Gone. The textile mill in St. Hyacinth closes on a Friday morning in March. 800 workers arrive to find padlocks on the doors. A security guard hands out letters. Your position has been eliminated. Effective immediately. One man has worked there for 37 years. He stares at the padlock and says nothing. What is there to say? Inside the mill, the machines sit silent. Equipment that made clothing for a century. Looms that could weave fabric tight enough to stop wind. Sewing machines calibrated so precisely they could stitch leather without breaking thread. By June, all of it is sold for scrap. The metal melted down. The skills left with the workers who have nowhere to use them anymore. In 1996, Bauer announces they are moving hockey skate production to China. The company promises nothing will change. But by 1997, NHL players start complaining. Skates cracking during games. Boots separating from blades. Equipment managers ordering twice as many replacements as before. A father buys his son new Bauer skates for Christmas. $400. The most expensive skates in the store. 2 months later, a crack appears in the boot during practice. The store manager looks at it and shrugs. Normal wear and tear. The old Bauers lasted 15 years. These lasted 8 weeks. The shelves at Canadian Tire fill with tools that look identical but break constantly. Different brand names. Same factories in China. A socket set lasts 6 months. A screwdriver handle splits after 3 uses. A man stands in the tool aisle holding a wrench that just snapped in half. He remembers his father's tools. Still working after 40 years. He looks at the price tag. $75. More expensive than the old ones. Half the quality. By the 2000s, Made in Canada became something different. A marketing trick. A way to charge more money for the same cheap quality. In 1997, Canada Goose launches with big promises. Premium winter coats. Made in Canada. The tags say so. A jacket costs $600. People buy them believing they are getting what their parents had. Real Canadian quality. But the down-filling comes from China. The zippers from Taiwan. The fabric from Indonesia. Only the final assembly happens in Canada. Sewing together parts made everywhere else. This is not the same thing. But the label says Made in Canada and the price keeps climbing. Roots does the same thing. The beaver logo. The maple leaf. Everything about the brand screams Canadian. But by 2003, most Roots clothing is made in Asia. The sweatpants that cost $80 are stitched in the same factories as the ones at Walmart for $20. Just with a different logo. Parents buy them for their kids believing they are buying quality. The knees wear through in 6 months. Hockey equipment becomes a nightmare. A father watches his son play bantam hockey. Middle of the second period. The palm rips clean out of his glove. $120 glove. 6 weeks old. After the game, they drive to the sports store and buy new ones. This happens twice more that season. 3 pairs of gloves in 4 months. The father remembers his own gloves from childhood. 1 pair lasted 3 years of house league and 2 years of road hockey after that. Another father buys his son Bauer skates. Top of the line. $400. The salesman promises they are the best. 2 months later, a crack splits up the side of the boot. He brings them back to the store. The manager examines them and hands them back. Normal wear and tear. Not covered. The father holds the broken skates and feels his face get hot. His own Bauers from 1982 are still in the garage. Still perfect after 20 years. And here is the cruelest part. Companies kept charging Canadian prices for foreign quality. Same cost. Quarter of the lifespan. What died with the factories was more than manufacturing. It was trust. In small towns across Canada, the mills were not just jobs. They were the heartbeat. When the textile mill closed in St. Hyacinthe, the coffee shop closed 6 months later. Then the hardware store. Then the grocery store. The young people left because there was nothing to stay for. Main streets that were busy for 80 years became rows of empty windows and for lease signs that never came down. The knowledge disappeared with the workers. The men who knew how to forge steel strong enough to last decades. The women who could double-stitch a seam so it would never split. The craftsmen who understood that quality took time and care. They all retired or moved away or died. And nobody trained replacements because there were no factories left to work in. The skills built over a century were gone in 10 years. Pride went with them. Made in Canada used to mean something you could hold in your hand and trust. Now it means assembled from foreign parts. A grandfather works in his garage. His grandson watches him use a socket wrench from 1971. The boy asks why grandpa's tools still work but his dad has to buy new ones every year. The grandfather holds up the old wrench. Heavy. Solid. The metal thick and cold. He explains that it used to mean something. That promise. That handshake. Make it right. Make it last. Stand behind it. But here is what they could not kill. Canadians who lived through it remember. They kept those old Stanfield long underwear in the drawer. Those Bauer skates from 1982 in the garage. Not because they are cheap. Because they remind them that quality existed once. That Canada made things that lasted. And maybe if enough of them remember, someone will care enough to bring it back. Walk into any thrift store in Canada today. You will find work shirts from 1970 with seams still perfect. Right next to shirts from 2020 already falling apart. That is not nostalgia. That is evidence. Made in Canada did not just die. It was murdered. And everyone watched it happen.